Hey, I'm Emily, and my field experience is at a private ABA clinic where I work as a RBT. I would like to continue to work in a private clinic as a BCBA, but would be open to working in the school setting as well. And I have some experience with behavioral assessments, and I'll note some of these experiences that I have with assisting or observing as we go through this. And then one more thing is that I included an additional link for the visual for this presentation called Fast Visual. For the literature review, I will be discussing FBAs and FAs with the information I found from the following resources. 1. Applied Behavior Analysis, 3rd edition by Cooper et al., 2019. 2. A comparison of functional behavior assessment procedures to the functional analysis of problem behaviors by Romani et al., 2023. And 3. Teaching and Behavior Support for Children and Adults with Autism Spectrum Disorder, a Practitioner's Guide by Lucelli, 2011. Romani et al. 2023 reports that you should conduct an FBA when the problem behavior that a child engages in interferes with his or her learning. Problem behaviors are behaviors that can cause difficulty with social relationships, communicating and learning, as well as causing harm to oneself or others. According to Cooper et al. 2019, a functional behavioral assessment, an FBA, helps us determine how the environment affects one's behaviors. This is done with an indirect functional assessment, such as questionnaires, descriptive functional assessments, such as direct observation and ABC data, and functional assessments. And then we will get to that next. Once the causal relationship between the environmental events and problem behavior is found, an intervention can be created to alter antecedent variables, alter consequent variables, and teach alternative behaviors. And then a functional assessment, an FA, seeks to find the function of the problem behavior by setting up the environment to test different conditions. These conditions include giving access to attention, escaping a task demand given, and then given access to tangible items, one item or multiple, or the play condition. And each condition is tested one at a time to determine if it is the function of the problem behavior. And according to Lucelli, 2011, there must be at least 2 conditions to compare between. The organization that I work for uses both an FBA and an FA, but I'll discuss how we use FBAs. So before a client receives services, the caregivers are given an indirect functional assessment, or they're given a questionnaire, several questionnaires that we can use as an indirect functional assessment. And one of the tools is a questionnaire called a Functional Analysis Screening Tool. It's called a FAST, which is used to determine the possible function of the problem behavior. And the caregivers are asked to answer the questions. So now if you could refer to the fast visual as I go through this. And I'll just go over a couple things here. So one important thing that they note is to select one behavior at a time. You wouldn't want to discuss the child hitting as well as the client refusing during the same assessment. You would want to do 2 separate ones for those behaviors. And you can go through here and kind of see some of those different questions that it asks about your relationship with the child. And it asks questions like, or it gives statements such as, the behavior usually occurs in your presence or in the presence of others, and the person would simply answer yes or no. And then as that's just the first statement, as you go through, you go down to the bottom and you circle, if you answered yes, you would circle those numbers at the bottom, and then you would see what that has next to it. So say you answered yes to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. It's likely that this behavior, the likely maintaining variable is social reinforcement, attention, and it definitely can have more than one possible maintaining variable. And then, so next, when the learner comes in for the initial assessment, we do a descriptive functional assessment by observing the problem behavior that the caregivers report, as well as any other behaviors that occur. If any occur, sometimes when a kid comes, they might not engage in any problem behaviors. That's only been the case for me for one learner, but it has happened. And when the client begins services, the RBT or the BCBA or BCABA, working with the client continues to observe the problem behavior as well as taking ABC data when it does occur. Typically, we only, at my center, at the center I work at, typically we only see a learner during the initial assessment for 1 to 2 hours. Then the BCBA has about 2 weeks to complete the BIP. That includes the behaviors targeted for reduction. And once the child receives therapy, the behavior assessment process is ongoing. Clients might show very few problem behaviors when they first begin, and then engage in the same problem behavior at a more extreme level, or engage in new problem behaviors once around peers and novel adults. It could be that the client is not used to somebody constantly giving them task demands all day. And that can be frustrating. So they might show different behaviors that they didn't show before. And I believe we do sort of a shorthand version of an FA due to limited resources, and because this is the clinical setting, not a naturalistic setting. We typically rely on the ABC data to find a possible function rather than setting up the testing conditions as discussed in Cooper et al. 2019. For example, I just began working with a learner about 3 weeks ago who did not climb on any furniture during his initial assessment. I actually helped with the initial assessment, so I didn't observe that, as well as the parents did not report that that was a problem behavior that he engaged in. But on his first day of therapy, he did that multiple times with me. So after taking the ABC data where some of the antecedents might have been a task demand placed, but like I said, he just started, so there was very few task demands given. And then some of the antecedents I had to put as unknown or internal factors or events because no demands were placed, or there was nothing observed that I could note. I wasn't sure of what the antecedent was. And then like I said, after looking at the ABC data, some of the consequences were me giving attention to the behavior. So if he climbed up on a table, me holding my arms out and talking to him, asking him to come down, things like that. Or some consequences were he got to the table and jumped off faster than I could catch up to him. So he, I guess, was given access to the sensory of jumping off the table. So after looking at those, I quickly learned that the function was likely access to sensory by jumping from a high surface, as well as sometimes for access to attention. After discussing this with his BCBA, she agreed with me, and he now has access to a short stool in his therapy room to jump from, as well as given access to jumping on a mattress from the bed in our clinic once the mattress is placed on the floor, just because we don't have a trampoline right now. And so once we get a trampoline, he will have access to that rather than the mattress. These are to use as a replacement. And if he climbs on objects and is looking right at me, I also don't have to give attention to the behavior if it's not a safety concern. So just for example, our playroom, what we call our NET, our natural environment teaching, the playroom is very large. And so if he is across the net and there's this one specific purple table that we have in our little kitchen area, that he will sometimes, so far, I mean, it's happened maybe twice, he will look at me to see if I'm looking while he has his arms on the table. And if I see him do that, I'll look away. And it's very short to the ground, about as tall as the stool, so it's not really a safety concern. And so far, he's jumped off it when he first started. I guess I said it's happened about twice, but when he first started, it happened a couple of times, maybe 2 to 3 times. And then since I've been able to ignore the behavior, do planned ignoring, since then he has initiated it about 2 times, and then he's stopped. So that part of the being able to not give attention to it, that's helped with that too. And so, in conclusion, I would like to learn more about how to conduct an actual FA. According to Luiselli 2011, this is favored for a variety of reasons. But the reason I personally like the most is that it requires a therapist to look at the learner's background before implementing the intervention. Thank you.